I'm the Reverend Ron Phares. My pronouns are he, him, and we are All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, a connection-centered community. We come here to welcome and be welcomed by the world, by its animating spirits, and by each other. To find a home in the world through this company. Of course, some of us are watching from their own home right now, so let's make sure we welcome them with a wave. Hello. You are not here in the room, but you are here in our hearts. You and everyone. For we know that here, everyone deserves love. It is a foundational principle for us. Everyone deserves our tenderness and humor and hope, and there are so many of us who do not get it from their family or history or culture. And if you haven't gotten the love you need, I hope you find some of it here. I hope you can give some of it here. Everyone deserves love. You are human and you need to be loved. Okay. Just like everybody else does. Okay, that was The Cure, which is the name of a band, not... But it also is The Cure, it occurs. So this is a place where we can practice love with each other so that we can take that love out into the world. It's a place to cultivate and fortify ourselves with the spirit of love, the spirit of creativity and generosity, a spirit that fortifies us to engage with a human world that too often falls prey to the cycle of violence when love is the only lasting remedy. May love be our lens. Now, to center ourselves and fully arrive, I invite you now to turn that lens of love upon yourself. Welcome your whole self to this moment. The bits that shine and the bits that want some more patience. You're okay. You're safe. We got you. A deep breath. Breath is medicine. A deep breath. Later in the service, we will explore the way in which intention nurtures meaning and connection. As a preliminary step into that path, I'd invite you now to set a personal intention for our time together today. Your intention could be an aim or a question. So to help you get in touch with your intention, you might reflect on what brought you here. Why did you come today? What lies underneath that habit and rhythm? Why this community? Why this kind of community? What is your intent for this hour that we craft together? For what does your spirit yearn? Set your intention. When you have that intention in mind, see if you could invent a gesture that embodies it. So you could touch your third eye spot. You could think about your intention and just do that. You could wiggle your fingers or tap some body part. This is technique. Set your intention in a gesture. You can use it as a reminder later in the service and even later in the week. You'll have that gesture and that intention that will remind you of this hour everywhere you go. So let's do that now. Put your intention into a gesture and do the gesture. So this is a conjuring. And you are all now wizards and rock stars. You're making a lot of progress. And this community is a blessing.
If you've been around Unitarian Universalism for a while, you might remember when elevator speeches were the next big thing. I was attending the UU congregation of Augusta, Georgia back then. We had tons of sermons and workshops and adult religious education all around the concept of creating a 30-second snapshot of our religion that you could share. It seemed like a worthy effort, since when you live in the South, the second question anyone asks you is what church you go to. The first would be, who are your people? It didn't take long for me to realize that the real work was not in deciding what to say. It was really deciding when to share, when it might lead to having a real conversation, or when I might be better off saying, you might be right. This was magical for me. Having grown up in a family that loves to argue about just about anything and makes it a competitive sport, the winner is the first one to make somebody cry. Since I disagreed with them about so many things, I was a frequent target of their games. I'd learned to just shut down or walk out when presented with any ounce of disagreement. But you might be right became an important tool for me. I didn't have to get physically ill before family gatherings or meetings with coworkers. Why was I engaging in debates when there was no chance of being heard or making a difference? It was so much better when I had that "you might be right" card in my pocket. I could actually hear what they said instead of going in pre-defensive. I could conserve my energy for people who were actually interested in hearing me. There are definitely times to speak up, offer another viewpoint, or just make it clear I disagree. But when I can see folks are just trying to needle me or are arguing for sport, I can say, you might be right, even if I'm really thinking they're full of shamrocks. Let's forget the offertory. I invite you now into an offering for to support this community and its ministry. Baskets will be passed here in the sanctuary, and instructions for giving online will be shown on the screens. May we give in love and hope.
I don't know if you all can feel it, but there is magic in our midst. This weave of community and enthusiasm and practice and possibility. Can you feel it a little bit? Can you feel it shaping us? It's here even now, shaping us whether we know it or not. I've seen magic like this before. It happens when our souls vibrate in sympathy. It's amplified when we really see each other's hearts. Not just when I see yours, and not when you just see someone else's, but when we see each other's hearts mutually. And that kind of mutuality is possible when we have a common lens through which to see one another and to see the world. A common lens is connective. When that connection sparks, magic emerges. Come to think of it, the magic is always there. The connection is always sparking, but a common lens just allows us to see it and to sow it and to amplify it. So this kind of magic, of course, is no stranger to this place, but it is often unacknowledged and so unleveraged. And I think it's time we give it our utmost attention. Cultivate it intentionally, reinvest meaning into the world, and thereby dispel our loneliness, discover our inherent connection, and harvest our essential creative purpose and role on this planet. That sounds nice, right? I think it sounds nice. But what am I talking about, really? What is magic? The magic that I'm talking about is not so much seances and more about meaning and connection. To my way of thinking, magic is a generated field of meaning that connects you and guides you such that it feels like serendipity. Magic is a kind of enchantment wherein you feel consciously and reciprocally welcomed by the world. So I'm going to say that again. Magic is a generated field of meaning that connects you and guides you such that it feels like serendipity, wherein you are consciously and reciprocally welcomed by the world, and it can be conjured by methods, practices, and techniques. So have you ever been to an escape room? Okay. If you haven't been, do you know what an escape room is? Okay, someone doesn't know, we'll tell you later, okay. Although this next part won't make any sense, okay? It's the illustrative story. All right, so it's a room that you go to with friends and you have to escape from. They give you clues, and there's this one where it's just filled with multicolored dots all around the room. It's very disorienting. Dots are all different sizes and colors. And to escape, you have to solve a series of riddles until you finally get your hands on a pair of glasses, which are tinted, like maybe say like tinted green, and you put on these lenses, and when you put them on, a message emerges from this crazy colored dot room, and the message directs you on where to go and what to do. Good job, it says. This way. And of course, the message was there all along. You just needed the right lens. And that's kind of what I mean by magic. Our world is a crazy dot cosmos until we view it through the right lens. And then all the meaning that was always there emerges to guide us. But in the case of the world, it's not a single message of escape. It's a jazz ensemble of messages from a living cosmos playing separate parts together, responsive to each other, which means responsive to you, leading us into yet deeper responsiveness. Magic is entering into a dialogue with the world. It is jamming with all creation. Just needs a lens. So how do we do that? What are our techniques? So, if you don't mind, I'd like to refer to two tributaries I've mentioned to you recently. The first highlights our principle of responsible search for truth and meaning and our source of earth-centered traditions. So you'll recall last month, I think it was, we reflected on oral knowledge systems. We learned that when you invest meaning into matter, in many cases in the form of a story, the meaning becomes a medium for matter to communicate with you. So if that's too woo-woo for you, then you can think of it as the observation that meaning exists where you invest it. And then because everything is always changing, meaning becomes dynamic. It's a two-way street. Meaning is a medium of exchange, and that's magical. The second thing I want to refer you to with regard to how we make magic is a personal experience of mine. Of course, direct experience is another one of our sources and highlights the same principle of a responsible search for truth and meaning. So as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I was in 2022 invited to the Netherlands along with other religious professionals curious about the role of psychedelic renaissance in our various traditions. And while the explicit topic was certainly compelling, my greatest takeaway concerned the power of intention in community. Intention in community is a lens. It reveals magic. So, as you may recall, we were asked to set an intention for our week together in Holland. And my intention took the form of a question, which now you may be well familiar with: how to be home in a transitory culture. That was my intention. It took the form of a question. Throughout the course of the week, we took part in several group experiences, practices, and integration sessions. So this included like breath work, Osho meditation, blindfolded dancing, the Eucharist, singing, rituals, jumping up and down and whooping like a monkey, altar building, walks in the woods, a cacao ceremony, storytelling, a psilocybin ceremony, poem reading, and open-hearted sharing. It was a good week. Each of these was explicitly and constantly framed by our individual intentions. And importantly, our individual intentions were known and supported by everybody else in the group. In fact, these intentions that we held separately soon began to interweave with one another. Our individual intentions formed a whole cloth of that temporary community. It was a very powerful experience. Our intentions became that lens through which all of the experiences of the week sieved through. The lens of our intention was like putting on those glasses in the escape room. Information transmitted in a poem or a prayer or ritual or walk in the woods went from being interesting to being highly significant, deeply personal, and instructive. So if you remember from a couple of weeks back how image yourself to Christ impacted me and became, in my mind, eventually, image yourself a dandelion. So if you think about that, you'll have one instance of many that occurred throughout that week. So those many instances accumulated and compounded and fractaled and resonated. Messages from the crazy dot cosmos emerged coherently. I was moving in a world that seemed to be communicating with me. And this is well before and entirely besides any mycelial chemistry. This was just earnest, open-hearted people supporting each other's intentions such that the intention became an investment of meaning into the world. And the world, my friends, has something to say. Everything is saying something. And the more you attend to it, the more it will attend to you. But until we provide it a medium, or provide ourselves a medium, a story, an intention, a lens, it's just a bunch of random molecules. But give it a lens, and you'll find it says, "Good job this way." You start jamming with the ontological jazz band of the universe, and that may sound far out, but we're simply cultivating meaning. And meaning is necessarily multipolar and intersubjective. It generates in a shared field of connection. It is magic. So maybe that's why holding intention in community is essential. Holding intention together honors the intention of others and opens our hearts to other people in a new and really good way. And that too is absolutely magical. It's awesome, it's possible, it's practicable. Magic has technique. It has method and practice, and that is what this place can do. That is what you can do here. And that is what here can do to you. It is important, crucially important to note that though the intention comes from you, the meaning that it makes is not only you. It is relationship. It will call you out beyond who you are. If you come at it with a heart hardened by suspicion, it will not work. But if you come at it with some vulnerability and spaciousness and imagination, you will find a new, profound, existential friendship awaits. So this is my experience. And it's also my offer. I'm sort of assuming that that sounds good to you. It sounds good to me, and it sounds like why I'm here, and I guess I've assumed it's why you're here too, in this community, in this church. Or maybe, if not all of you, then some of you. Or maybe I'm a freak. I don't know. But if that is of interest to you, then there are 3 ways in which we may focus on cultivating magic here. And yes, this reflection is a big old advertisement for these ways. The first way we can cultivate magic here at All Souls is by centering our covenant. Now, this is a longer-term project, and it comes with a puzzle, for we do not currently have a particularly active covenant. More than that, I'm not sure that we have a proper understanding of covenant as a whole congregation. That's a next year project, but we will tackle it together. The covenant is simply a set of promises we make to one another about our orientation in the world and amongst each other. So next year, we will begin exploring both what covenant is in detail and how to craft one suitable to this community. So that is an intention held by community covenant. It's a lens through which our depth, meaning, and purpose will reveal themselves and begin working on us. It is the investment of meaning into place and body and system. And given enough intention, it is capable of a similar kind of magic. Covenantally generated magic can manifest in many ways, but in short and ultimately, it is the manifestation of beloved community. Not just with us, but with the world. And beloved community is actually another sermon, so I owe you one. The second way in which we can cultivate magic through community held intention, community held intention, is via another upcoming liturgical element. And I haven't quite worked out the mechanics of it yet, but I'd like to explore intention setting as a regular part of our service together. When we figure out an elegant way to do that, we will experiment with it, and it'll be something akin to the gesture-anchored intention we set this morning. Do you remember your gesture? Yeah. Do you remember your intention? Maybe you can ask each other about that over coffee after service. The third way we can cultivate magic at ASUUC is an upcoming small group ministry experiment I'd like to invite you to called fire tenders, as in tending the chalice fire, the fire of commitment, the warmth of community, tending the magic ember. So in fire tenders, we'll gather as a group of 12 or less, and this will run every semester from here until I drop, if it works. So we'll gather in a group of 12 or less for about 6 weeks and engage in some of the ritual and practices and some sharing, all of which will be grounded in a personal intention held in community care. And we will see, it's an experiment. So with some vulnerability and imagination, we'll see if the world does indeed start talking back. So that's 3 ways to start engaging intention in community, in increasing layers of density. And until then, we will work with what we have. An ember of magic held in community, working on us even now, asking for our attention, for sustenance, for gratitude, for fuel. So let us feed that spark with our intention until it becomes a campfire around which we may gather and be warmed and share stories. For as we tend to the flame, we tend to one another. As we nurture the magic, we nurture each other. And as we craft lenses of its light, whole worlds of meaning burst through being. Messages abound. In poems, in clouds, in conversations, and right now, in song. As we leave this sacred place and time that we have magically conjured together, you may think to yourself, what other church is singing Xanadu on a Sunday morning? And you will think to yourself, you're in the right place. Let us go forth, reflecting on our intentions, sharing our intentions with one another, holding those as sacred in community, developing them into lenses through which the world will begin to talk back to us. Let us go in peace, and let us go in magic.